Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. On this episode we've got a little something new and a little something old. We are in the new shop. Say hi, Grizz. Come here. Buddy. Okay, welcome back to the channel. You can probably notice here that we are in the new shop. Welcome to the new home of the CPR Ford Garage. We have a couple parts here that you haven't seen yet. One of them you're going to see in this video and one you will not. So what we're doing is we're back on the 460 from Project Vicky 460, the 69 F100 behind me here. We're going to get into that, but you're going to see this later, so I'm going to go ahead and show you what it is right now. This will be topping off our 460. The crown jewel, which is, look at that, a Holley Brawler, or should I say quick fuel. Same thing, but Brawler, 750, mechanical secondary, yes it's a double pumper. Electric choke, carburetor. Better look real quick at the carburetor. Look at that goodness. I believe these are like cast in China, but it seems like they load them up with a lot of good parts. Billet base plate, screw in air bleeds so they're adjustable. Yeah. Glass sights for the float bowl adjustment. Okay, so what we have here is a Pertronix. It is the, I believe, the Igniter 3. Yes. So it's their cast forward-looking distributor with the Igniter 3 module inside. So it's basically made to look like a cast Ford distributor, an OEM one from the 60s with the small cap, but inside it has their Igniter 3 module. I don't know if you can see that there, but there is an LED on there and there's a plus or minus switch. This has a programmable rev limiter, which was a big thing that I wanted because we're going to do some drag racing with this. If a drive shaft breaks or loss of traction, something like that, I don't want to blow up this new engine. So, and it's obviously a magnetic pickup and not points like my pickup would have come with. I am going to have to change the gear because I believe it is set up for a roller cam, but I have a gear. I'll show you how to do all that. What I'm going to show you here is how to find top dead center and how to degree your camshaft and how to make a solid lifter out of a good used hydraulic flat tappet lifter. And make sure you know that that is for testing purposes only. You cannot run that in an engine as a solid lifter. It will destroy itself in short order. So that's just for mock-up, for measuring the things we're measuring. So we're going to show you how to do that. In the end, I'm going to throw some parts on there and I will give you a sneak peek of what the engine is going to look like when it's assembled. I'm going to do my best to put all the parts I'm using in the description. Somebody actually asked me for that, and I need to do a better job with that. For now, I'm just going to try to put them all in a Summit Racing cart and link that if that'll work. That's who I prefer to buy speed parts from, and I've been buying parts from Summit Racing for, God, I don't know, 15 years, 18 years, something like that. So I'm just a big fan of theirs. So I'll throw that all in there. Look for that in the description. And what we're going to get into first is some snapshots and maybe some quick little videos. I'm not sure if I have any of moving the shop. Okay, so we've got number one bank here, number one piston. And what we're gonna do today is, we don't have a head gasket. We're gonna go ahead and install an intake valve number one in one of the heads. Mock up the head on here, and we are gonna check cam timing. So before we do that, we need to find top dead center. This doesn't have to be super precise because we're just basically measuring it in relation to itself, not necessarily in relation to the deck surface. Because what we're going to do is drop that guy right in the center of the piston, like so. And it's pretty close to top dead center right now. So we're just going to make sure that we have plenty of poke sticking out the top here. And that we can see our needle, which will get that towards the front and in line, or I should say perpendicular to the piston. So let's get this moved around here. Okay, hopefully you can see that okay. Have my El Cheapo Mr. Gasket degree wheel on the crankshaft. This is a little awkward because the crank snout is so long on a 460, but I have just a piece of wire mounted on one of the timing bolt holes with a bolt and pointing at my indicator and in line with my marks. You can see my dial indicator up here. So what we're going to do is find top dead center, and in order to do that, we're going to crank it over and pick a measurement on the dial indicator before top dead center, roll it over through top dead center, and on the way down on the other side, pick another measurement. We're going to split the difference between those two, and that is top dead center. It's basically, there's dwell time at the top when the piston comes up to top dead center. So we're going to pick the middle of that dwell time. So we'll go ahead and crank it over. Okay, so our cylinder, so our piston is coming up and now contacting our dial indicator. So we're going to see the highest that it gets. Oh, it was right there, and we're going to set that at 0. Okay, so 20, 22, 23, 24, 24 was the highest that it got. So let's go back to 24. Oh, of course now it's okay. So there's 24. We'll go ahead and move that to 0. We'll go back and check it again. It should come right up to 0. Okay, there's 0. That's as high as it went. Okay. So now we're going to back it up, and my timing marks on the gears are about lining up, so that's how I know that it should be top dead center on the compression stroke, not the exhaust stroke, hopefully. We will also verify that with watching the intake lifter. Yep, so that lifter is going down, now it's coming back up. Okay, so that's intake valve is opening, then the intake lifter is going back down, and then it comes up. So yes, that will be the compression stroke. Okay, so let's pick, just at random, 30 thousandths. Or not. Okay, so on the way up, we're right at 70, so 30 thousandths lower than the highest it gets. Where's my notebook? Okay. So at 30 thousandths lower than top dead center on the way up, our degree wheel is at 79 degrees before top dead center. A couple different ways you can come at this. I had 79 for my first measurement, 61. You can subtract 61 from 79, which is 18. Divide that by 2, it's 9. Add that to the lower number, that gives you 70. So that is halfway in between. So that's halfway in between. Or, easier, kind of quicker way, add them together, 61 plus 79. 61 plus 79 is 140, divided by 2 brings you back to 70. So what I did was cranked this over till I'm at 70 before top dead center, and you can see my dial indicators at 0. Now, without moving the crankshaft at all, so I'll get some vice or big channel locks and hold on to it, I need to bust this bolt loose, move this wheel to top dead center, lined up with the pointer, and then cinch it down. So as we're shooting this, just had to show you here, Roni decided to come out and have a picnic lunch with me because it's lunchtime, huh buddy? Mm-hmm. We're gonna eat some lunch and then get back to work on Vicky's engine, huh?
Not too bad, yeah.
The Vicky 460, huh? Can you say Vicky 460?
Those rhyme.
Those, say it.
Vicky 4... what?
60.
Vicky 460.
Okay, so this is what we've got here for mock-up. One intake valve, a lightweight checker spring, which I got at the hardware store for like $1.30. Valve retainer, set of keepers, one cylinder head we're going to use for mock-up. I have a push rod that I cleaned, one of the old ones, and I've got 6 studs, probably totally overkill, but we're going to go ahead and put those in. So there's that head. We're going to get it on there and mock it up with no head gasket because we're just checking cam timing right now. We're not worried about piston to valve clearance or push rod length, preload, any of that stuff. Okay, so here we are on plan B. If this fails, we're on to plan C. You can see I have real valve springs installed now. What happened when I put that checker spring on and I tried to tighten down the rocker, it would compress the spring. So I was getting some funky readings on my dial indicator. So what I did is took the springs that are actually for this cam and I went ahead and installed the exhaust valve too, because we're going to go ahead and check that. You can see right through the spring. That's because I took the damper spring, which is the inner spring, out. You can just kind of pry and pop them out with a screwdriver. I'm trying to make this as light as possible so that hopefully it won't compress the lifter when I try to check all this stuff, the plunger inside the lifter. If it does do that, I guess what we're doing is taking a couple of the old lifters over to the shop and putting a couple tack welds on them to make them solid, and then we will rock on with that. So let's give this a try. Well, that failed. So compressing the lifter now that the spring is stiff enough. So this is going to turn into an impromptu lesson in converting hydraulic lifters to solid. These are 2 of my old stock lifters from when I tore down the 460. That's why it's a good reason to keep stuff like this. They have a little bit of wear on them, but they are not convex on the bottom. They're about flat, so they're fine for mock-up. And we were going to need these for mock-up anyway for measuring piston to valve clearance and for measuring push rod length. So this first one, you can see what I've done is popped the clip out of the top, removed the piston, and there's still the cup down in there, and there should be a spring underneath that cup. And I know what you can do on small blocks is you take that cup out, flip it upside down, and put the piston back in, and it's solid. Might have to stack some little washers in there or something, but I can't get that cup to come out because it's so grody. So I'll show you how to take this one apart, and then we're going to toss them in a bath of solvent and let them soak for a while and clean them up really good. So by some miracle, this little clip didn't fling across the room on the other one, which they usually do. So you can see what the top of that looks like, hopefully, even though it's pretty grody. The little spring clip in there. So what I'm going to do is kind of wedge this in a rag, push down on the plunger just a little bit with this push rod, take my pick tool and pop that clip out. Yep, there it goes. She just shot across the room. Ha! I think I can find it. So now this is starting to rise up a little bit, but they get all coked in there with oil. So what I'll do is take it and bang it on the, well, the floor works better usually. So I've got it up that far. There we go. I was able to get my hook into the oil feed hole. If you're keeping all this stuff, you want to keep those together and not mix and match because they have worn a pattern into each other, but for mock-up purposes, we don't care. We're just gonna, yeah, that really doesn't want to come out. I think that's actually the spring maybe. We're gonna throw them in some solvent and then we will finish on that. Okay, so here's my cleaned up, used lifter body. If you can see, I don't know if you can, nothing in there right now, it's totally empty. So I'm gonna take this lower cup, put a little oil on there. And we're gonna drop it in there the way it goes. It doesn't really matter, we're just basically using it for a spacer. So if flipping it the other way works better with the washers you have, go ahead and do that. And then we're gonna take our piston and put a little oil on that guy. Okay, drop it in there. And then we're gonna stack some washers on it to figure out how many we need. So I just stacked them in there just to check. 2 looks like not enough, 3 looks like maybe too many. So now we gotta knock the piston back out of it, which it should come out pretty easy now. Just drops right out of there. And this is the part that moves up and down inside of the lifter with oil pressure against this spring to control lash on a hydraulic lifter engine, which is actually a pretty good system unless you're spinning really high RPM. So I'm going to take my 3 little washers and drop them in there, kind of get them shook around in the right spot. Then we're going to drop the piston back in there. This is the bottom, this is the top, you can see, because it has a little cup for the push rod. You know, it looks just a little too high. I'm gonna see if I can ramrod the clip in there, because if I can get the clip in there, it'll be just perfect. Let's make sure we really got all the schmutz cleaned off of the clip, so has the best chance of going in there. I've also heard what you can do is take these guys and grind them against some sandpaper to thin them out a little bit and get them to slip in there. Okay, I'm going to take the prong end and stab that in first. Oh, come on, you want to go in there. Then I'm going to take my death pick, that likes to stab fingers, and try to wedge the clip in there. Oh, get in there. Come on, you like it. Come on. Just get it in. Oh, so close. Oh, come on with it. And she's in. So now we have a solid checker lifter. And to make sure there's no slop in it, I'll just take this other push rod and that piston is not clacking around at all in there. So three of these washers, number 10 metric, was the magic. Now let's give this a try on plan C. Okay, here's a quick look at the operation. This rig is not the most stable, but when you got high dollar aluminum racing heads, the downside is you can't put your magnetic base on it because it's aluminum. So I have the chintzy vice grip cable snake deal set up. We are ready to rock and roll on number 1, so let's measure it and find out. Oh, went a little bit too fast. So I'm gonna grab the first 6 thousandths. Those are the commonly used numbers. So there's about 6 thousandths, and that is happening at 15 degrees before top dead center. You're gonna have to take my word on that because you can't see it, so write that down. 15 degrees before top dead center is 6 thousandths lift. And there is the first 50, which is also the commonly used number. Okay, and I am at 2 degrees before top dead center. Okay, then we'll keep going. So that's 100 thousandths, 200 thousandths, 300 thousandths, 400 thousandths, 490, looks like 491. Back that up a little bit. And always check to make sure we're not bottomed out on your dial indicator. But it looks like we still got plenty of room to go, so yeah, 491 lift. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And cam card versus actual and how all that goes. I do think maybe the push rods might be too short, so that might have something to do with it. But that won't affect duration. Okay, so now that's 400, 300, 200, 100. So this should be the at 50 number. So at 50 thousandths, we are at 40 degrees after bottom dead center. And remember, as you're looking at your degree wheel, it's always when it's rotating clockwise, if your motor rotates clockwise, that is. Then we'll go down to 6. So at 6 thousandths, we are at 55 degrees after bottom dead center. There. So that is checking. That is with the cam installed straight up dot to dot, as per the cam timing marks. So we'll keep running it all the way down to make sure. Yep, that was 0. You can see now it's off a little bit. This whole snake thing probably moved a little bit during, because they're just not that great. So we might be off by 2 or 3 thou. I'll show you what I came up with on the cam timing here real quick. So normally you're gonna degree it in by the intake center line of the #1 intake lobe. I don't have that number on my cam card. What I do have is basically the lift at top dead center, and that's a much easier way to do it. So these, by doing the math, these are the at 50 thousandths measurements. So at 50 thousandths lift, they're saying the intake opens at 0 degrees before top dead center. So there should be 50 thousandths lift on the intake lobe on the way up at top dead center. And I had 50 thousandths at 2 degrees before top dead center. So there's tolerances, and there's also what can be done with a lobe, because custom camshafts are made from an existing blank. So basically the cam designer comes up with what this engine needs, and then orders a cam blank from a cam manufacturer like Comp, Crane, whoever. There's only a couple of them, and they have them grind their specs onto that cam. For one thing, there's only so many things that can be done because the blanks already have egg-shaped lobes on them. You can only grind them so much, okay? So there's that, and then there's also manufacturing tolerances. So, but what came out wonky, you can see all my numbers that I wrote down here to do the math on it. So I measured lift at 6 thousandths on the way up as the valve is opening, and then also at 50 thousandths, and then on the way down as it's closing, the very last 6 thousandths and the very last 50 thousandths. These are the numbers I came up with. A couple different ways you can do it. The easiest way to do it is, so let's say it's 6 thousandths, 15 degrees before top dead center, and then the after is 55 after bottom dead center. Top dead center to bottom dead center is 180 degrees, right? They're 180 degrees apart on the wheel, as you can see. So 180 plus 15 plus 55, and that gives you 250 degrees. So that's where things are weird and screwy. Something's not right there. But anyway, what you do is you take those numbers, add them together, divide them by 2, and then whatever degree that comes out to, that is the center line of those two measurements. Same thing with the at 50 measurements. They came out screwed up, and I'm pretty sure that's because the stock push rods are too short. Because when I looked at the rocker arm on here, the bottom of the rocker arm was way down here, like almost out of adjustment, and the way that the angle that the push rod, if you picture the rocker like this, the push rod was coming into it at a really weird angle like this, like it's too short. So also the way that you can actually see there's a little bit of wear on the valve stem, and it's all to the outside. So if the push rod was longer, the rocker would be up higher, and the pattern on the valve stem would be more centered. But we're not even getting into that yet. We were just verifying that the cam is installed correctly. Went ahead and put thread locker on the bolt, torqued it to 45 foot-pounds. So that's done. We can throw the timing cover and oil pan on after I get the oil pump in and that stuff cleaned up. So we will do that. But the push rod length is going to have to be something to contend with. Luckily enough, we already made our solid lifters. I showed you how to do that. So those are what we're going to use to determine push rod length and to check piston to valve clearance, because now those lifters will not compress. All right, that's all I have for you this week. Thank you everybody for watching. Subscribe if you like what you see and you want to see more. It doesn't cost anything. I don't know if some people aren't familiar, but all it does is it gives you an alert on your phone or your tablet or whatever you have. When I put out a new episode, it lets you know that I put out a new episode. It doesn't cost you anything. So I'm trying to grow the channel. There's going to be a lot of good things coming the rest of this year and next year with projects, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.